Welcome to the part 2 of the story. Now let's get into it. The following week, Ada walked into Kemi's salon, her presence as striking as ever. She was carrying a neatly wrapped bundle of hair extensions, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of confidence and expectation. Kemi, she said, striding towards the styling chair, I've got the hair I want to use today. This is the one I'm going with. Kemi looked up from the station she was setting up, already sensing something was off. Ada, I thought we talked about this, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You know the policy. I can only use the Renaissance Network's extensions for my clients, no exceptions. Ada placed the bundle of hair on the counter, unwrapping it slowly with a determined look on her face. This is the one I want, she insisted. Her tone unyielding. I know the policy, Kemi, but this hair was given to me specifically for an event. I don't have time to wait for Renaissance Network product to be shipped in. And honestly, I don't want to settle for anything less than this. Kemi's stomach tightened. She had always maintained a strong boundary when it came to the terms of the agreement she had signed with the Renaissance Network, and breaking it now felt like crossing the line she wasn't ready to cross. I understand that you need this for the event, Ada, but the policy is clear, Kemi replied, her voice calm but with an edge. The agreement I made. I know, Ada snapped, cutting her off. But this is different. You don't understand, Kemi. I'm not asking you to use your usual supplier. This hair was personally given to me, and I've made it clear this is non-negotiable. You either use this hair or I am walking out. Kemi felt a wave of frustration rise within her. She didn't want to argue with Ada, but the pressure of the situation was mounting. She could see the anger starting to rise in Ada's eyes, and for a moment it felt like the situation might spiral out of control. Ada, please. I can't break the contract I signed. It's not just about the hair. It's about the integrity of my business and the trust I've built with the Renaissance Network. I can't risk it for one job, no matter how urgent it feels. Kemi's voice was steady, but she felt her resolve begin to waver. Ada was her friend, and the last thing she wanted was for their relationship to be damaged over something like this. But Ada wasn't hearing it. Her face flushed with frustration, and she turned to leave, clearly angry. Fine. If you're not going to listen, I'll just go somewhere else, she muttered, heading to the door. Kemi's heart raced. She couldn't afford to lose a client like Ada, not after everything she had built. Without thinking, she stood up quickly, rushing to catch up with Ada before she could storm out. Ada, wait, Kemi called, her voice rising with urgency. Please, just sit down. Let me do your hair with the hair you've brought, and we'll figure it out after, but don't walk out on me, okay? Ada paused in her tracks, her back still turned towards Kemi, her anger boiling just beneath the surface. For a moment, the air was thick with tension. Kemi took a deep breath and continued, I will style you with this hair today, Ada, but I want you to understand that this isn't a decision I make lightly. I'm doing this because I respect our friendship, but we can't keep going like this. There has to be a balance. Ada turned slowly, her expression softening slightly as she considered Kemi's words. I don't like feeling like I'm being pushed around, Kemi, Ada said, her voice quieter now, but still tinged with frustration. I've been loyal to you, but I need you to see it from my side too. Kemi nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. I get it, Ada, I do, but I can't just throw away everything I worked for. I hope you understand. There was a long pause before Ada sighed, walking back towards the chair. All right, I will sit, but this doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Kemi gave her a small nod of relief. Thank you. Let's just get this over with, and we'll talk about the next steps later. Ada sat down, still looking frustrated, but at least willing to work with Kemi. Kemi took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. She hadn't wanted to make a compromise like this, but sometimes the pressures of the business and of friendship weren't so easy to navigate. As she began to walk, the sound of her combs and brushes filled the room. The weight of the situation was still there, but Kemi did her best to focus on what she did best, styling hair. Even in the midst of everything, she reminded herself her craft was still the one thing she could rely on. A week had passed since Kemi had reluctantly used Ada's hair extension for her styling. The tension between keeping her business intact and maintaining her friendship with Ada still lingered in the back of her mind, but business was booming again, and the salon was filled with clients, just as it has always been since her partnership with the Renaissance Network. But that afternoon, something strange happened. Kemi was working on a new client that afternoon, A client who had come in for a simple hair treatment. She was focused on her task, weaving the braids with care, when out of the corner of her eye she saw something disturbing. It started as a trickle, a red liquid dripping from her eyes. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, or perhaps some stray product that had splashed into her eyes. But as she glanced into the mirror, her heart stopped. Blood. It was dripping down her cheeks. Slowly at first, then more quickly, like a cruel and deliberate reminder of something that had gone wrong. Kemi's breath caught in her throat and panic surged through her body. She froze for a split second, staring at her reflection, unsure if what she was seeing was real. Her fingers trembled as she slowly reached up to touch her eyes, but the blood had just kept flowing, pulling down her face. Wait, what's happening? She stammered to herself, her voice trembling. The client in the chair noticed the sudden change in Kemi's expression and turned to look. Is everything okay? The client asked, her voice shaky. Kemi didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. She felt a wave of dizziness hit her as the blood continued to drip from her eyes, staining her hands. Her panic grew as she realized she couldn't stop it. Without thinking, Kemi rushed out of the salon, pushing past the other stylists and clients, her heart hammering in her chest. She stumbled towards her office, her mind racing with confusion and fear. What was happening to her? Why was this happening? She burst through the door and slammed it shut behind her, locking it as if trying to seal away whatever was happening to her. Kemi rushed to the mirror, her breath coming in ragged gasp. As she stared at her reflection, her eyes were red, the blood staining her cheeks and dripping down her neck. She had never seen anything like this before. Is this some kind of curse? She whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. She had heard stories about bad luck following broken promises, but she had never believed in such things. The next morning, Kemi could barely keep her eyes open. She hadn't slept a wink, her mind still racing from the horrifying events of the night before. The blood had stopped dripping from her eyes, but the memory of it remained, haunting her every thought. In a panic, she decided to go to the hospital. She couldn't make sense of what had happened and she needed answers. The doctors there ran a series of tests, blood tests, scans, everything they could think of. Kemi tried to explain what had happened, her voice shaking as she told them about the blood and the burning sensation she had felt in her eyes. The waiting room felt like an eternity. Kemi sat there, her heart pounding in her chest as she stared blankly at the floor. Her thoughts tangled. Had it been real? Was it just a stress-induced hallucination, or was something much darker at play? Finally, the doctor came in, holding a clipboard with her test results. He looked at her with a calm expression, but Kemi could tell he was trying to keep his emotions neutral. Kemi, the doctor said, sitting down across from her, I've reviewed your results, and I can assure you there is nothing physically wrong with your eyes. All your tests came back normal, no sign of infection or abnormalities. Kemi blinked, her mind spinning. What? But my eyes. I understand that you are experiencing something disturbing, the doctor continued, his tone sympathetic. But based on the test we ran, your eyes are perfectly healthy. There is no medical explanation for what you described. Kemi stared at him, her mind racing. How was this possible? She had seen the blood. She had felt the strange sensation, the terror that gripped her when she saw it. It had felt so real. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the doctor's calm demeanor only left her feeling more confused. So you're saying it's all in my head? Kemi asked, her voice almost a whisper. The doctor nodded gently. It could be a psychological reaction to stress, anxiety, or maybe something more complex. But physically, there's nothing wrong with you. I would recommend speaking with a therapist to explore what might be causing these symptoms. Kemi felt her chest tighten, the weight of his words sinking in. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. If the doctors couldn't find anything wrong, then what had really happened? Was she losing her mind? The following week, Kemi woke up with a sharp pain in her head at first. It was a dull ache, nothing too alarming, but as the day went on, it only got worse. But midday, she was standing in front of the mirror, staring in horror as bumps began to form on her scalp, large swollen lumps that felt hot to the touch. Her breath quickened. She didn't know what was happening to her body anymore. First the blood, then the strange sensation in her eyes, and now this. Her head swelling with painful lumps. The panic that had slowly started to subside was now back with a vengeance. Without hesitation, Kemi rushed to the hospital once again. The familiar sterile smell of the waiting room felt suffocating this time, and she found herself pacing, her mind racing. Had the doctors missed something? Was this connected to strange event that had been happening since she signed the contract with the Renaissance Network? When her name was called, she followed the nurse to the same doctor who had seen her before. His neutral expression remained unchanged as he looked at the new symptoms. I see your condition has worsened, the doctor said, inspecting the bumps on her head. But once again, based on the test we've done, we can't find anything physically wrong. Your blood work is fine. There is no infection, no sign of illness. I suggest you continue with psychological treatment. Stress can sometimes manifest physically in unexpected ways. Kemi stared at him, her body trembling. Psychological treatment. This isn't just stress. My head is swelling. My eyes were bleeding. How can you just keep saying there is nothing wrong with me? Her voice cracked as frustration bubbled to the surface. The doctor remained calm, but his words felt like daggers. Kemi, we can't diagnose what we can't find. We'll continue to monitor you, but I suggest seeking counseling. It may help address the root of the problem. She stood there speechless, her mind spinning in cycles. She had seen the physical evidence. She couldn't deny it anymore, but no one was listening. No one was taking her seriously. She was losing her mind, or at least that's what they all seemed to think. As she left the hospital, her thoughts turned darker. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She had put everything into her salon, everything, and now it was slipping away. By the time she got back to the salon, the air felt thick with tension. Her employees were no longer as energetic. Their movements were slower, voices more quiet. The once bustling space now felt more like a ghost town. A few of her staff had already quit, citing personal reasons, but Kemi could feel the shift. They were leaving because the salon was losing its luster. They could feel the changes, the subtle decline. The customers, once loyal, were now few and far between. Kemi's phone barely rang, and when it did, it was often to cancel appointments. Word was going around. Something was wrong with Kemi. People didn't want to risk being part or a part of whatever this was. Her reputation was beginning to tarnish, and she could do nothing to stop it. But the worst part was that Ada, her once closest friend, hadn't been in touch. Not once since the day Kemi had reluctantly agreed to use the hair extension. She had tried calling, but Ada never answered. She sent texts, but there was no reply. The silence Ada gave her was deafening, and it cut deeper than anything else. She thought they had a bond, but now it felt like Ada had disappeared from her life entirely. Kemi sat alone in her office, her head pounding with the weight of it all. The swelling in her scalp throbbed, matching the ache in her heart. She had worked so hard, fought so much for this salon, but now it seemed like everything she touched was falling apart. Her mind wandered back to the day she signed the contract. She had been so eager to make a name for herself, to create something that mattered, but now everything felt tainted. The contract, the hair, the promises, it all felt like a trap. Kemi had built something beautiful, but now it was slipping through her fingers. The dream was fading, and she was helpless to stop it. Desperation gnawed at Kemi as she stood outside the Renaissance Network building. The towering structure loomed over her, its polished glass windows reflecting the midday sun like a cold, impersonal fortress. She had to get answers. She couldn't keep spiraling into madness without understanding why everything was falling apart. The blood in her eyes, the swelling on her head, the loss of her salon, her client, even her friendship with Ada. She had to confront them. They had to explain what was happening to her. With determination burning in her chest, Kemi walked up to the glass doors, ignoring the uneasy flutter in her stomach. She pushed the door open, the cool air of the lobby meeting her as she stepped inside. She had a mission. She was not leaving without speaking to someone from the network. She needed to know the truth. But the security guard at the front desk didn't even look up as she approached. I need to speak to someone in charge, Kemi said, her voice a little too loud, carrying a note of urgency. The guard's eyes flicked up briefly before returning to his paperwork. Ma'am, you don't have an appointment, he said in a monotone, his eyes never leaving his desk. You can't just walk in here like that. Kemi's frustration built like a pressure cooker. I don't care about an appointment. I've been through hell since I signed your contract. I need to speak to someone now." The guard remained unmoved, his expression cold and uninterested. "You have to leave now, madam. You are not allowed in without prior approval." Her heart started to race. She had already felt ignored and dismissed by the hospital, and now this? Kemi's voice shook with anger and desperation. "This is my business. You don't understand what's happening to me. I've been dealing with this for weeks and I need to speak with someone. I'm not leaving until someone listens to me." The security guard finally looked up, but his gaze was dismissive. He stood and started towards her, gesturing towards the door. "Madam, if you don't leave now, I am calling security." Kemi's blood boiled. She had come here for answers and all she got was silence, like the world itself was conspiring to shut her out. "No, I need answers," she shouted, her voice rising with panic. She could feel the tears of frustration welling up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She slammed her hand on the desk, desperate. "What did you do to me? Why are you doing this? I kept my side of the deal. What is happening to me? Why is this happening?" Her voice echoed through the empty lobby, drawing the attention of the other workers in the building. Some glanced over, but no one moved to help her. The security guard's face hardened, and he motioned for two larger men dressed in black uniforms to approach. "I warned you," the guard said in a low, flat tone. "You need to leave now." Kemi's heart pounded in her chest. As the men moved towards her, she backed away, her breath coming in sharp gasp. "You can't just do this. You can't just..." The guards grabbed her arms and pulled her towards the door. Kemi struggled, twisting and pulling, her anger and fear overwhelming her senses. "Let go of me," she screamed, kicking out, but they were too strong. Before she knew it, they had forced her outside. But and the doors slammed shut behind her with a finality that made her blood run cold. Kemi stumbled back, her body shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. She stood there on the sidewalk, her heart racing, staring at the building as if it had just swallowed her whole. She had come for answers, for a solution, but all she had gotten was rejection and force. One of the guards called out from inside, "We've warned you. Don't come back here again or you will regret it." Kemi stood frozen for a moment, the weight of their words settling over her like a dark cloud. She was no longer welcome. The organization that had once promised her success had turned its back on her, and now she was on the outside alone. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of Kemi's failure and confusion pressed harder with each passing moment. The blood in her eyes had stopped, but the swelling in her head had only worsened. The bumps on her scalp, once small and manageable, were now painful sores that refused to heal. Her body, once vibrant and full of life, had become a hollow shell, weighed down by the invisible force that seemed to have taken control over her. Kemi had no home to return to, no family, no friends, and no one who cared enough to ask if she was okay. She had become a shadow of herself, someone unrecognizable, not just to the world but to herself. Her reflection in the mirror no longer felt familiar. The woman who had once stood tall and proud, braiding hair with a smile, had faded away, replaced by someone barely holding on to life. She wandered the streets of Utunde, her ragged clothes, her hair tangled and matted beneath the soles. Her face had lost its glow, the dark circles under her eyes a testament to the sleepless nights and the weight of everything that had gone wrong. She slept whenever she could on benches in alleyways, sometimes just leaning against the cold walls of abandoned buildings. Her head throbbed constantly. The pain from the bumps on her scalp, a cruel reminder that she had once had everything but now had nothing. There were times when Kemi would stand in the middle of the street, staring at the world moving around her, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. She had once dreamed of success, of building a legacy, of becoming someone people looked up to, but now, all that was left with a hollow existence. The fear of what might happen next, of whether she would wake up each day, consumed her. The streets were her new home, the only place where she could hide from the reality that had swallowed her whole. Kemi stood at the edge of the street, the familiar weight of regret sinking deep into her chest, her eyes still swollen and covered with sores. Looked out at the busy world around her. She had lost everything, her salon, her health and her dreams. But deep down there was a burning question that refused to leave her mind. What had she truly signed up for? Moral of the story: one must be careful about the deeds they sign up for in the pursuit of success. What seems like a simple opportunity may come with unexpected cost. Women in particular should be mindful of the brands they trust for their beauty because who knows what dark forces might be at play. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next story.